That's no moon. It's Death Star Battle on 1200 XL, episode 13. Hi, everybody. Welcome to 1200 XL. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about Star Wars, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, man.
Death Star Battle. Is that a title or is that a title?
It's long, Boat. It's long. There's a lot of words in that title. But, I mean, you have to be fully descriptive. If you just put Return of the Jedi in there, how would anyone know what movie series that was a part of?
That's true. That's true. Nobody would know. They would think it was some sort of Planet of the Apes spinoff.
Plus, everything you see these days has Death Star in it. So you couldn't just put Death Star battles in there either. You got to have the whole thing.
Now, Aaron, I think everybody has the point in their life when they start to hate Star Wars.
Yeah.
When was that point for you?
It was directly after I went and saw The Phantom Menace. It was instantaneous.
That was the cutoff, huh?
Let me tell you something. And I feel bad for... And there's certain people out there that are old school fans. I'm sure Flack will get all it. Flack's a homer. He likes all these movies. But I treasured the trilogy. Held it in high regard. And there was a time back in the day where you could not see these movies. Like, aside from the fact that VCR tapes were expensive to buy back in the day, and there weren't a lot of rental places. You got to think Star Wars came out in like 1977. These things didn't even come to videotape for forever. And when they did come to videotape, they were expensive. I remember just how excited I was to be able to rent the videos of these. Because I was like, oh, man, I get to go see Star Wars again. I hadn't seen that thing for like 10 years or whatever. It was a big deal. And so all those years go by, and you're always wondering if they're going to make any more, you know. And then all of a sudden you hear the rumor, hey, they're making another one. And then you're like, oh, this is going to be great. And then you hear, hey, it's a prequel. Well, I don't think I'd ever seen a prequel. Point. I was like, oh,
I know for sure I never heard that word.
Yeah, I never heard of such a thing. And so I'm like, prequel? What about Luke? Because what irritated me about the trilogy was, and I'm assuming that most people watching this have at least a passing knowledge of Star Wars, but Luke Skywalker just became a death machine at the end of the third one, Jedi. Like, here he is. He's got the jack. And Princess Leia and Han are together. I thought to myself, oh, man. Now we're going to see them really do some awesome stuff.
Right.
And there had been book series and stuff that featured Luke that had done real well. And I was like, man, this is going to be the bomb. And all of a sudden, here comes this prequel. And then as we got closer and closer to it, I kept hearing things I didn't like. Like, none of the original characters were in it. It was like years and years before the originals. And I was just like, man, I don't know how this is going to go, you know. But it was Star Wars, and we all had faith in George Lucas. And I went and saw this thing, and I mean, I saw it opening weekend, of course. And it was, in my opinion, and some people may have another opinion on it, it was just dull, stupid, boring. The best character in it got killed, and it was just lame. And and not even getting into the whole midichlorians thing or whatever. And so I thought, that sucked. I'm going to give these guys, they've earned a lot of goodwill towards me. Let's see what they do in the second one, Clone Wars. That was even more dull. You know, and so I didn't like any of the trilogy. Some people think the third one is like some kind of great shakes. I don't think it's that good. The acting in it was, Mystery Science Theater levels of acting in that first one. Anakin, young Anakin, and his mother, genetically, you can tell they're related because their acting prowess is hideous. I mean, dinner clubs wouldn't hire these two goofs. So, yeah, I wasn't a big fan. And then as the years have rolled on, they've chipped away at the stone of the trilogy that was in my head, like the monument in my mind to the trilogy. They kept working on it. And I find myself today... it was the first, I guess it would have been, I saw the first movie that came out that Disney did, and then I think I haven't seen one since. They did it. I mean, they actually kicked me out of Star Wars, which I didn't think was possible. And it's a real tragedy. And now I don't want to bury people that like Star Wars and the new ones and stuff. Hey, different movies for different generations, whatever. But they killed it for me. But what about you?
Yeah, for me, it was really while I was watching episode 3. because I was like you. I was like, all right, this first movie was really, really long. I just remember coming out of the theater, and there were all kinds of technical problems when we were watching. We watched it opening day over at the over at Southridge.
Mm-hmm.
This is the famous picture of me and Hat Chad and Da Krabs, MTG, and a bunch of our goofy friends. I was dressed up like Han Solo. I had this deerskin vest because you know how he wore I look just like him. Let's just say that. But anyway, we during the one of the epic moments of the 15,000-minute pod racing scene, the audio went out and they started playing Rock 105 during the and it was a surreal experience. And but even at the time I was like, man, this is kind of nice that we're getting a break from this. The first movie, but I was like, you know what? They're laying the foundation. It's going to get better with part 2. Okay. Now, part 2, I actually think was the best of the 3 because at least it had the cool lightsaber duel with Yoda and Dooku.
Let me tell you something.
I thought that was pretty rad.
Let me tell you something about that scene. Because like I said, the first one disillusioned me, so I wasn't going to even see the second one. I thought, I've never not seen one of these on opening weekend since the second one. I'm going to go, and I caught the last airing on opening weekend, and I think the theater was full of, there were single guys. I don't think I saw a single chick in the joint. It was packed, and we sat there through that entire movie, and people were just. It's funny when it came on, people cheered a little bit, and then they just sat there and sat there, and no one did anything until finally there's a scene where Yoda fires up the lightsaber, and I looked around at the theater, and everyone else looked around, and there was a swell like, yeah! And then we watched that scene, and it was over, and it was just like, yeah. And then we all just sat there, but it was the darndest, it was just like a wrestling show. They popped for that one thing. That was it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, like that, but that gave me, I was like, okay, so the third one, it's going to be the thing that makes all this worthwhile. And the third one is seriously, it's not Godzilla in '99. That was the worst movie I've ever seen in the theater. But it's right up there with one of the worst movie-going experiences in the theater that I've ever had. It was truly, truly horrible. So that's where I lost the faith in the Star Wars films. However, you mentioned the books. Like, I think the Timothy Zahn Star Wars books are great. And just like so many other things, I like the idea of Star Wars, I think, more than anything that's ever actually happened. Like, just the whole universe, the X-Wings flying around, you've got the smuggler with the heart of gold, all that stuff. I like the idea of that stuff more than the actual product itself.
Yeah,
so
I can understand that. Yeah, and I will say this, as a little kid, I get a unique perspective because I'm so old. And so I saw Star Wars in the theater back in 77, 78 with my dad. And I'd seen the commercials. That's the only time I ever told my dad I want to go see this movie. And so we went and saw it. And I looked on in sheer amazement of what was unfolding in front of me because I never seen anything like it. And when Luke goes down the trench and blows up the Death Star in the first movie, I mean, it was a almost spiritual moment as a young kid. Because at the time, I was only like 7 or so. And I don't think I had an experience like that in the theater again until I went and saw the first Lord of the Rings, that very beginning battle, where I was just like, holy smokes. Those, and so you'll never kill it off entirely in me, but yeah. But I will say this week's game made it kind of fun to look back at a time when Star Wars was still a hot property and I was really into it.
Yeah, well, speaking of looking back, Aaron, why don't we talk a little bit about Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, Death Star Battle?
Absolutely. Now, I'm guessing, Bo, that somewhere down the line you played this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had this game back in the day for the 1200 XL that's sitting right beside me. I still have the original cartridge, and sat beside me right now.
He's reaching.
Pull it off the shelf right here. Oh my God!
That's okay. Don't worry about that. It's just glassware. It's all right.
Yeah. So this is the sealed copy. A couple years ago on the Amigos Secret Santa, Checote gifted me the ultimate Atari 8-bit lover's dream. He sent me this, a bunch of books, some other stuff, not knowing that I had such an attachment to this game. So I'm forever grateful to Checote for this, a sealed copy of this game. Now, Aaron, this was published in 1983 by Parker Brothers. Okay, so Parker Brothers what comes to mind when you hear about Parker Brothers and their foray into video games?
Well, usually I think about their arcade conversions. You know, your
Mm-hmm.
Froggers and your Pac-Man, stuff like that. They actually, it's funny, we go back and look on these shows. Parker Brothers ended up being halfway decent back in the day, didn't they, Boat? They put out some pretty good stuff.
Because I'll tell you what Parker Brothers brought to the table. They brought money to the table, Aaron.
Yeah.
Because they were rich because of their board game empire. You know, they had it all. They had Clue and Monopoly and everything. In America, they were the first name when it came to board games. And so when they decided to get into the video game business, they didn't beat around the bush. They knew that the key to good selling video games, the key to profit, was locking down licensed titles. Now, that's not to say that they didn't have games that weren't licensed titles. We covered Montezuma's Revenge a couple months back, and that was an unlicensed game that Parker Brothers published. But by and large, they were in it to win it with the licensed titles. They did the G.I. Joe game for the 2600. They did the Strawberry Shortcake game. You'll notice that these games are not going to appear in any best of lists on the platform, but that they produced games with these licenses, and these games I'm sure sold very well. But on the other side of things, like you said, they did a bunch of arcade conversions. They locked down these licenses, so they did Popeye, they did Q*bert, they did Frogger, and later on, they started getting in, of course, the board game adaptations, but they were really only in the classic video game business for 2 years. They got in '82, and when the crash hit in '84, they made their exit.
It's too bad. They had, like I said, a good run. I'd forgot about Montezuma. Yeah. Were they responsible for the Empire Strikes Back game? Is that one of theirs as well?
I believe so. Yes. So, they did some good stuff in their little amount of time on the market, but it's a little unfortunate. We don't know exactly who these people are. I searched far and wide on the internet, Aaron, to find the programmer or anybody that had anything to do with this game, and I could not find any information about who the actual programmers were. So much like Atari in its nascent days, they did a good job of not giving anybody any credit for anything that they did. So the names behind this game will go on being unknown, at least for the time being. But anyway, so Star Wars Return of the Jedi Death Star Battle. I would characterize this game as a top-down flip screen shooter with 2 screens.
And simulated 3D.
Yeah, simulated. Well, sort of. This game, it starts you out in a space that it's supposed to represent you are orbiting the Death Star from afar, okay? And you are piloting the Millennium Falcon, and you have free range to move about the lower third of the screen, or probably it's like the lower half of the screen. You can move left, right, up, or down in any way that you want. When you reach the end of the screen, you loop back around, and you are fighting enemy craft. So you've got the TIE interceptors here. You've got the Imperial Lambda class shuttle that is here, and it's your job to shoot those ships for points. Now, Aaron, before we get too far into what you do in this game, now that I've sort of set the stage, tell me about your first impressions with this game.
It's funny. When this game came up, I vaguely remembered playing it, and I don't think I ever played anything but the like a 2600 version. I don't remember ever playing on the 8-bit. Let's put it that way. And so when this comes up, I'm struck instantly by the graphics of the shield. Boy, it looks cool. They did a great job rendering it. The Millennium Falcon is passable. You can tell it looks like a circle with a couple pointy bits on the end, and a rectangle cut out. But I mean, it does the job.
It's like Pac-Man with braces.
The shuttle you mentioned, the Imperial shuttle, that looks good. I don't think you can. I never was able to kill that. I'm assuming it's unkillable, isn't it?
You can kill
really?
it. You get I think like 1,000 points. You get some major point bonus by killing it, but you can kill it. The thing is,
it's fast.
It gives you so little time. This is a game that you have to play with the sound on because there are a lot of cues in this game, and when the shuttle is about to go, you'll hear like a or something like that, and then it'll rush across the bottom of the screen.
It rolls across quick, and so the first screen, I thought, man, this looks really good. It's funny when you fight the guys at the bottom of the screen. You're fighting. I mean, I will say these aren't what I would say that were the best rendered ships. They look like they came out of the Blood Money enemy selection committee, because the TIE fighters are not. I mean, they're not. I mean, none of that stuff looks great, but it's not.
Well, I'll say this. Yeah. I'll say that they're recognizable for what they are.
They're good enough. You're good. Yeah. They're good enough, but they're not great. But it's offset by the fact that the stuff on the other side of the screen looks really good. All right, the shield looks awesome. You can see the Death Star, the under construction in the background. There's a sequence where you move towards the Death Star, where you kind of warp in. That was cool looking. It's also got those rich, luscious Atari sound effects for explosions, for warping. They're hard to describe unless you were a kid back in those days, and you kind of know them. That it's kind of like the sound palette, if you will, of those systems. And so, and I've always liked it. I always have, because it's a very rich, thick noise that this thing makes, and so I like that. But overall, graphically and stuff, once I laid my eyes on this boat, I thought it was a real looker for the most part.
Yeah. Now, though, I've described phase 1 of the game. Phase 1 is that you're orbiting the Death Star from afar. Phase 2 starts after you kill a certain. I think this is how it works. After you kill a certain number of TIE fighters, or just wait maybe a certain amount of time, you'll start to see holes appear in the Death Star shield. Yeah. These things open up just like holes in Swiss cheese, perfectly round holes, and you fly into those holes. And when you do that, you enter into sort of an 8-bit version of going into hyperspace. Yeah. That is the the very famous scene in the Star Wars movies. Whenever they go into hyperspace, it looks super cool. The stars whiz by you and stuff like that. So you get an approximation of that I think is pretty good in this game. And of course, the sound effects are very, very cool during that part. Actually, it sounds kind of like a Tauntaun. Actually, it's like, but
it sounds less lame than that. That's
when you get to the other side, you see the Death Star, and the Death Star is big.
Yeah.
However, the Death Star is really the scale is wrong. Let's just say that when we get to because you're essentially next to the Death Star in this point. And the Death Star, I would say, is probably about 1/20th or maybe 1/15th bigger, or 15 times bigger than the Millennium Falcon. And of course, if you know anything about the Death Star, it's the size of a small moon.
It's like if you drove like the space shuttle up to the moon and you set them side by side, and the shuttle looked like it was about 1/10 the size of the moon. Clearly, it's not.
Exactly.
So let's give it the benefit of the doubt and assume there's a great distance between the two, even at that area.
Let's do that. So at this point, you're still contending with fighting off the TIE fighters and things, but you also have to destroy the Death Star. This is done by chipping away at the Death Star itself, breakout style or Arkanoid style, with your missiles, until you reach the cherry red center of the Death Star, and at which point the entire Death Star sort of shakes and moves and turns red and then explodes.
Yeah.
And while it's in the process of exploding, it fires off these fireballs from it, or the sort of the wreckage of the Death Star, and you have to avoid that or be killed.
Yeah.
Now, while you're doing that, the Death Star has an offensive weapon of its own. It actually has this little green block that travels horizontally across the screen and sort of follows you, and every once in a while it will fire down a green laser, and it's sort of like a homing beacon type thing that's out to get you. So you've got to avoid that. So you can't just roll up to the Death Star and fire a bunch of shots in the center. You've kind of got to finagle your way and go back and forth to trick that laser into not firing at you. So you're doing that, and at the same time as all of that, the Death Star is also slowly being rebuilt. Parts of pixels are essentially flying in from off screen and filling in parts of the Death Star that need to be complete. And of course, if you can't blow up the Death Star by the time the Death Star is complete, the game is over and you will be destroyed by the laser wherever you are. So and we already mentioned that the Imperial shuttle will venture across the screen in a horizontal path and find you. It sort of reminds me of something like Killer Bees, where you've got to watch out for enemies that are attacking you from above and from the side. So that is the game in a nutshell. Aaron, what do you think about this game?
You know, I will say the holes opening up to the shield, in terms of the storyline of Jedi, if you'll recall, you had Han and Leia on the Ewok home planet there, and they were trying to take out the shield that protected the Death Star that was under construction. So I'm assuming, in terms of the film, that these holes were opening up because Han and Leia were down there jacking around with the shield that was keeping this thing protected. So I like that. It actually fits in with the movie, and then that frontier between you and the Death Star that is the shield makes sense. Once you get to the Death Star itself, hey, listen, this reminded me of the boss battle in Phoenix. If you recall.
Where you
break the bottom of the thing open. It's funny, you can break tons and tons of the Death Star, but you can only really use the center part, which is again sort of like Phoenix. It's neat. I noticed those little pixels flying in. I was like, what is that? And once I sat down and watched what was happening, I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I never lived long enough to get to a level where the Death Star could be rebuilt quick enough to where it made a difference, but it's still kind of neat. I think the Death Star looks cool. I mean, yes, there is some continuity issues with the Millennium Falcon blowing up chunks of the Death Star. If you'll recall in the film, Londo flies that sucker into the Death Star, which I always thought was, I'll be honest with you, I never liked that part of the movie because it seemed like the stupidest thing you could do would be to fly a ship into that. And how could you possibly maneuver in there? You know, But all that said, this actually, they rewrote the movie. That makes more sense this way. I can see the Millennium Falcon out dropping photon bombs from space and hitting the Death Star. I'll buy it. I'm buying it.
Yeah.
You know?
Now,
I like the defenses of the ship. It is neat how that laser follows you around. It's fun. It's challenging. There's a rhythm to it that if you understand the rhythm, you can sort of move when you think it's coming. You know, and usually you're right. You're always pestered by stuff at the bottom of the screen. Now, I thought it was real clever and a clever use of the film. One would wonder why they even bothered calling this Return of the Jedi. Well, I guess they did it to differentiate this from the arcade game of the same name, Return of the Jedi. It's the only reason I could think they would do it, because really this could have just been called Return of the Jedi, and you'd get the picture as to what it was. But a very neat game. Now, once you blow up the Death Star and it loops, it ramps up the difficulty with like a second shield that comes up on the front screen. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the second shield is a very thin, it's like a 1 pixel wide line that sort of fades in and fades out.
Yeah.
So you have to time your movement through the hole that opens up with that. You can't, whenever that pixel is visible, it will destroy you immediately.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
Yeah, it's a neat way to add more difficulty to the game that still is in keeping with the theme, which is always a good thing. Now, Aaron, when I was a kid and I fired this thing up, I thought, man, this is super, super impressive graphics.
Yes.
This is I mean, I wasn't going to go so far to say this is like I'm playing the movie, but I was pretty impressed with the graphics, and I was impressed with the Atari 8-bit computer's ability to render these graphics.
Yeah.
However, for the first time, Aaron, I went and I looked at the Atari 2600 version of this game. Have you looked at the 2600 version of this?
I had played that back in the day. Yes.
That is a programming masterpiece.
I will say it's not that far off, as I recall.
No, it's not. It looks almost identical to the Atari 8-bit version. So I'm revising my viewpoint and saying that, this is probably no great shakes on the Atari 8-bit, but programming a game of this amount of complexity and having the graphical fidelity that they did on the 2600 version, that is the version I would seek out and play just as an homage to all of those programmers for squeezing out the quality quality of the bare minimum hardware in the 2600. So kudos to those guys for doing it. But the 2600 and the Atari 8-bit were not the only two platforms to get a release of this game.
This is true.
There's one more, isn't there,
Yes,
Aaron?
there is. The old ZX Spectrum surprisingly got a port. Now, I didn't get to play this, but I did look it up, Boat, for a comparison here. Let's have a look. What you've got here is basically a very sort of a remedial version of what you're seeing on the Atari. The Death, I will say that I think the Millennium Falcon actually looks better, and the TIE Fighters look better too, but the Death Star looks not good. It looks like a Pokeball, basically, up there, spewing stuff. Is that what it reminds you of?
It does. It looks just like one.
You got to catch them all. That much said, in your opinion, Boat, now we know a little bit about the Specky. Does it have the jack to do better than this?
Oh, absolutely. I guarantee you that, Parker Brothers, they're an American company. They were going to put their best foot forward on the systems that were selling well in America at the time. I guarantee you they farmed out the Spectrum port, and I'm sure that it's the same old story where you've got, 2 weeks to do it. You've got a 16-year-old in his bedroom coding it, go to work. And they did what they could, but that is the version that you want to avoid out of all three.
I will say, as we gaze upon it now here, with the exception of the god-awful close-up Death Star, it doesn't look bad at all, to be honest with you.
Well, I
have not played it.
I played this some, and the ship movement does not feel good.
Really?
It feels like the ship, obviously space is a vacuum, but you have no momentum as you go. It's basically like you're just like pushing a magnet on a board.
I see.
And so the game just doesn't feel right. So like you said, the actual, before you approach the Death Star, that stuff looks okay, but when you get into the up close and personal with the Death Star, it's bad. It's real bad.
One would wonder what made them think that was passable for the Death Star. Really, that is. Everything else you could get by, but that is no good. And I don't know. I don't know what limitations they were under, but yeah, that was a dud, Boat, in terms of the looks.
Yeah. Now, I did find some interesting trivia about this game. Attached to the release of this game, Parker Brothers ran a contest, okay? They said, okay, fill out this entry form and, answer these questions. Remember seeing these in magazines back in the day, Aaron, where they're like, you could win this hi-fi lover's paradise.
Yeah.
It was like 18 game consoles and like a hi-fi system, and it was always like a crossword puzzle or something like that, right?
Yeah, I remember seeing those.
So this was one of these things. You could win a 50-inch projection TV, which I'm sure was a big deal back in '84.
You ain't kidding. Nobody had those.
You could win, in addition to that, an upright Star Wars arcade game.
Oh, God. What a deal.
But what's interesting about this is one of the prizes was a game called Star Wars Return of the Jedi Ewok Adventure. And so I'm answering your question right now, and you said, why did they call this game Star Wars Return of the Jedi Death Star Battle? It's because this was going to be the first of many Return of the Jedi games released.
That would explain it. Yeah.
And of course, what came along in '84 was the old video game crash here in North America, and so none of that stuff ever came to fruition. Parker Brothers shut down, and I believe that Star Wars Return of the Jedi Ewok Adventure, I don't think much is known about that aside from maybe a screenshot or two. I don't think that has been one of the ROMs that's been dumped, though. I could be wrong. So that's just sort of an interesting what might have been if the game crash hadn't happened. There's no word on whether they ever gave the other prizes, the upright Star Wars arcade game or the 50-inch projection TV. I don't know if that ever actually happened or not. With these video game contests, sometimes they weren't true to their word.
I have heard that, Bud.
Yeah. Star Wars Return of the Jedi Death Star Battle. One little bit of fun trivia that I saw over on Moby Games. If you lose your last ship while avoiding the explosion of the Death Star, if the current score is 200 points or less away from an extra ship, you'll still get the extra ship, but the game will end. So you get an extra life, but it's still game over. So you're out of luck.
Beautiful, man. Hey, did you get any action on the Discord with this?
I'm looking right now. We got one review from the living legend, Mitsuyama. He says, I was getting ready to slate this game, but the more I played it, the more I enjoyed it. I'm not sure if this is a direct port of the 2600 version, but it certainly looks the same as the 5200 version. The graphics may be basic, but they do a good job of representing the different types of ship. The Death Star looks great in stages 1 and 2, and I like the warp effect as your transition from stage 1 to 2. I didn't like the sound, and I would have turned it off if I didn't need to listen out for the Imperial shuttle and the Death Star laser alerts, but there are some nice R2-D2 chirps when you earn an extra life. The gameplay loop is very short, but I kept coming back to try and beat my high score. I expected a little more polish from the Atari 8-bit version. A title screen and an attempt at the Star Wars theme tune would have been nice. Yeah, you're not kidding, Mitz. However, it's still miles better than the Specky version. Stay away from that one.
There you go. Hey, just for fun, Bo, I don't know, does the boxed, sealed copy of this go for big money? Is this one of those games that are in demand? I'm assuming they printed about 1 million of those, so I'm assuming it's not.
You know, I don't, the one of the great things about collecting for the Atari 8-bit computers is that not much is expensive. You can still get your hands on almost everything, and it's because there was so much new old stock available.
Yeah.
That you can buy a great portion of the Atari 8-bit catalog, still new old stock from sites like Best Computers over in California. I'm looking it up right now, and it looks like, well, if you want a graded version, 9.8, Aaron, it's going to cost you $1,000.
Whoa, you're a rich man, dude.
However, in the real world, where people actually buy things for money, it looks like one of these just sold sealed for $52.
There you go. Hey, still not bad.
Yeah, and a cartridge only version sold for $37. So there's not much distance between the cart only and the sealed version. So yeah, you can still, these are still obtainable. One of the things I love about the Atari 8-bit computers is that it's still a very obtainable system to collect stuff for if you're in the market.
Pretty neat, Bode.
Now, Aaron, we have christened something, if you wouldn't mind, going over to the old 1200XL Patreon page. We're introducing some new features over here, Aaron. So first of all, we have a new level of giving. If you would like to support 1200XL monthly through Patreon, you can do so starting at the low price of only $2 per month. So if you want to throw us a couple bucks, you like the show, we sure would appreciate it. You know, every little bit helps. But Aaron, if you want to step it up, you actually, if you give $4 a month to us for 1200XL, you will get, at the end of this year at Christmas time, you'll get an official 1200XL magnet. Now, at the time of recording, if you're watching this, if you're watching the video version, I've not yet uploaded the photo of the magnet, but I've made the magnets, and they will be there. So there's a special official supporter magnet that you will get. And of course, if you give, you will also get access to our Discord server, the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. You can leave a review of any of the games that we play on any of the shows, and we will read those reviews on the air. But Aaron, the big money is at the old $10 a month level. Okay, $10 a month gives you access to the 1200XL Game Selection Committee, Aaron. And this is the level where you actually can nominate and vote on the games that we play on 1200XL. But that's not all. If you're the member of any of the game selection committees on any of the shows that we do, you get privileges for nomination and voting on all the shows. So you can help select the games for Amigos, our podcast about the Amiga, the CoCo show, a show about the TRS-80 color computer, and our Sinclair, our ZX Spectrum podcast. You get all of those benefits, plus being able to nominate and vote on games for future episodes of 1200XL. So, but there's also a magnet for this level too. You can get a special 1200XL Game Selection Committee magnet that comes at the end of the year, as well as the supporter magnet if you support the show at the $10 a month level. So speaking of the 1200XL Game Selection Committee, they have voted, Aaron, and the votes are in thanks to our Game Selection Committee chairman, David Z. Next month, Aaron, we will be playing Rally Speedway.
Rally Speedway. Okay. Racing title. I'm into it.
That's right. That's right. We want to thank Paul, a.k.a. Hermsky, for the suggestion. And, of course, One other thing about Patreon, we've set a goal, Aaron, and that goal is $200. If we can get $200 a month in Patreon, we will make 1200 XL a weekly show for your enjoyment.
Yes.
So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Now, Aaron, I know that you've played Rally Speedway before. I've played it before. I'm sure we'll have a lot to say about it. But until then, the only thing left to say is, have you played
your Atari today?
Nope. Make sure you play
your Atari today.